Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real far left. We're not talking about the Democrats. Democrats are not the real far left. We are not talking about the liberals or the progressives. Not the real far left. We are not even talking about the democratic socialists. Because the democratic socialists, according to the real far left, are not socialist enough for them. On Socialism Saturday, we watch the farthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian, because long ago, we figured out that every crazy thing in the world is coming from the radical, revolutionary, socialist left. If you want to know who is pushing critical race theory into schools, it's the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who is pushing gender ideology into schools, it is not a Gnostic sex cult. And anyone who tries to tell you it is a Gnostic sex cult has never actually watched Socialism Saturday, because the people we watch on this show are the ones pushing gender ideology. The people we watch on this show are the ones attacking parental rights. They're the ones pushing defund the police. They're the ones pushing for the climate justice. They're the ones pushing reproductive justice. Every crazy idea that you guys hear about from your conservative influencers every single day is all coming from people that they refuse to watch and they refuse to listen to. And that's why we have James Lindsay running around the internet going, Gnostic sex cults. Do you guys know that James Lindsay refuses to watch the videos we watch on Socialism Saturday? Do you guys know that James Lindsay's partner in crime, Logan Lansing, blocked me on Twitter for trying to show him the videos that we watch on Socialism Saturday? The conservative influencers have no idea what to do when you show them the real activists and the real true believers pushing these ideas in the world today. That's why the people who come to Socialism Saturday know more about what is going on the left than any other group on the internet. You know more than the pundits. You know more than the commentators. You know more than the so-called experts. You know more than the people who are literally peddling the books telling you there's a Gnostic sex cult. And listen, man, I don't have to be like James Lindsay and go, pinky swear, trust me, bro. I swear it's a Gnostic sex cult. Just believe me. I don't have to do that. Because all I need to do is show you the video. I will show you the video of the real far left activists telling you what they think, telling you what they're doing, and then you can decide for yourselves. Are the queer theorists really trying to have a Gnostic sex cult, or are they trying to abolish the gender binary as an attack on capitalism and the nuclear family? You don't have to take my word for it. We're going to watch some video tonight. Tayton says, that Yuri guy said we are strawmanning the Gnostic sex cult on James. Well, that Yuri guy can calm the fuck down. That Yuri guy That Yuri guy has been sucking James Lindsay's dick for years, and though I do agree with him on a great many things, I do not agree with the hero worship that goes on around James Lindsay, mostly because James Lindsay is lying to his audience about what queer theory actually is, and the reason that we know that James Lindsay is lying to his audience about what queer theory actually is we have literally hundreds of hours of this stuff documented on video that James Lindsay refuses to look at, James Lindsay refuses to grapple with, James Lindsay refuses to integrate into his Gnostic sex cult theory. When you sit down and watch the real radical revolutionary left, it is very clear what they're doing in no uncertain terms. And, James Lindsay refuses to do that because it doesn't align with the Gnostic sex cult conspiracy that he is peddling to conservatives to profit off of outrage porn. Nurutu says, in case anyone missed it earlier the other day during State of the Union, Joe Biden said capitalism before James Lindsay. And that will never be not funny to me. Yes. Well, many people have said capitalism before James Lindsay. Indeed. Thank you, Naruto. All right, guys, I do apologize for being a couple minutes late. We have been spy streaming all day. We've been watching feminist psychology for the last 2 days straight. If I seem a little wound up, it's because I have spent the last 2 days of my life watching feminist psychology. I have a literal PhD in psychology, and I have never watched as much feminist psychology as I have watched over the last 2 days. We just got done 5 hours straight of feminist psychology. And we're still here to do Socialism Saturday for all of you. And so I apologize for being a couple minutes late. I needed to take a break. I needed to set up some stuff. It's just the way it goes. But we're here and we are switching gears from feminist psychology over to Abolish the Family. And I have a little surprise. And by the way, is anyone new to my Abolish the Family content? Has anyone here not done Abolish the Family with me before? James Lindsay claims to do Abolish the Family. James Lindsay pretends he's doing Abolish the Family, but yet I have hundreds of documented hours of Abolish the Family. I have more Abolish the Family content than anyone on the internet. If you have never encountered Abolish the Family socialists in real life, it is a treat, guys. It is my favorite topic to cover. It is so insane. And we actually have a choice of videos today. I found a couple options. We might even watch both of them. Who knows? Maybe we'll get through both of them, but let me show you our options, and then we're going to do a vote on which video to watch first. Now, I found a couple really good Abolish the Family videos that we have not watched yet. And so I'm going to tell you about them, and then we're going to do a vote on which one we watch first, and then we're going to see how that goes, and maybe if it goes okay, we will watch the second one. Maybe. I can't, again, I've been watching feminist psychology for the last 5 hours. I might need to just have a shorter night tonight, okay? The first video that I found is a Sophie classic. I'm pretty sure we've never watched this one before. Naruto says, Carlin, thanks for keeping us sane-ish. I didn't promise to keep you sane. I didn't promise that at all. Now, for those of you who are new and maybe you haven't seen Sophie, Sophie is my internet girlfriend. She doesn't want to admit to it because she doesn't want people to think we're in solidarity. But Sophie is my internet girlfriend. I have watched more Sophie content than anyone else on the internet. I feel like Sophie and I are destined to have a torrid internet romance at some point when Sophie admits that she's obviously and clearly in love with me. And you know, I really feel like I know Sophie. I've seen Sophie in real life. She is one of our favorites. And Sophie has done more Abolish the Family content than like anyone on the internet, which is why we love her so much. Also because she's Sophie. Indeed. Her nickname is the Ginger Dragon. I don't know if Sophie knows that's her nickname, but that's the nickname that we've given her. I found a Sophie classic video that I don't think we've watched. This is from 3 years ago. This is from 2021. An event with Sophie Lewis hosted by Cambridge SU BME and the Women's Campaign. I think this is in the UK. I think so. I think this is like UK Cambridge. And you can see Sophie's hair isn't even red there. So we've got Feminism Against Family, a conversation with Sophie Lewis. That's going to be option number 1 for video that we can watch. Now, I don't want everyone to vote for Sophie just by default, though, because we can watch Sophie anytime, right? Like, we can, she's always there. Sophie has never left us. She would never do that. No. Oh, did Sophie ban you from DMing her? But we have another option that we can watch. So, do you guys know how we've been talking about this new revolutionary communist party that just sprouted up out of nowhere? The thing that James Lindsay swears is not that big of a deal, but yet we spent last Saturday watching them talk about how they have an internationally coordinated effort that they're putting millions of dollars into. But James Lindsay says it's no big deal. Don't look at this. Nothing to see here. James doesn't want you to see this stuff because if you watch this stuff, this goes directly in the face of what James is trying to sell you guys. So, this is, I believe, the Canadian version of the new Revolutionary Communist Party. That they have the American version, the Canadian version, they have a UK version, they have a Swiss version, they have somewhere else. They're launching these parties all over the world because they're an internationally coordinated effort. They have a video up from 9 months ago called Origins of the Family, a Marxist Perspective. And the description is this: why do Marxists want to abolish the family? Engels described the emergence of the patriarchal family as humanity's first counter-revolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, private property, classes, and marriage as we know it today did not exist. The Neolithic Revolution and the introduction of agriculture laid the material basis for a division of labor, and with it, the emergence of social classes, exploiters, and the exploited. The ruling class needed a way to pass their accumulated wealth to their offspring, that's generational wealth, down the male line, which is the patriarchy, which in turn necessitated a way to control reproduction, that's social reproduction theory, of the domination of men over women, also the patriarchy. This is the historical basis for marriage and the family in the present form and the continued attacks against women's reproductive rights. The family, private property, the state, and class society all have a shared origin. Today we fight to free human relations from the shackles of oppression and put them on a healthy basis under a socialist society. Fight Back is a revolutionary organization fighting for a socialist transformation of society. We are the Canadian section of the International Marxist Tendency, which is the Revolutionary Communist Party that just launched. We actively seek to educate workers and youth in the genuine ideas of Marxism in order to fight back against the capitalist attacks. James Lindsay refused to say capitalism, but they do. The socialists say capitalism. So these are our choices, guys. I have 2 Abolish the Family videos. We can either watch the new Revolutionary Communist Party, or we can watch a Sophie classic. And I'm going to put a poll in the chat over on YouTube. I'm sorry if you're watching on Twitter or if you're watching on Rumble. I appreciate you guys. I especially appreciate all the people watching on Twitter because I just think it's cool that I'm getting so many more viewers on Twitter. I think that's great. But people on Rumble and Twitter, you guys aren't going to be able to vote, but the YouTube audience will represent. You guys will decide which video we watch today. And while you are doing that, I'm going to do a couple housekeeping orders of business. Now, number one, please do make sure you are subscribed to my Substack. That is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. As I said, it's been a big spy stream type of week. We spy streamed the Revolutionary Communist Organizing Call the other day. You can see a highlight reel from the Revolutionary Communist Organizing Call. This was a private event. No one else has this video footage but me. If you want to see what the Revolutionary Communists are planning in America and how they are recruiting new people to their organization, this call will tell you. And yes, it is that terrifying. The full video is available on my Substack. You can also watch a highlight reel that I have on my Substack. I also put the highlight reel up on all the different platforms, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. But you can watch the full video there, and I really recommend you do. Because this is not an organization to take lightly, guys. I swear to God. Anyone like James Lindsay who dismisses this organization is not hinged into reality with what the far left is doing and what they're pushing in this country. And I promise you, people don't take this seriously. The Marxist revolution is going to come sooner rather than later because these people are highly organized. And they're probably going to get their shit together a lot sooner than the GOP does. That's just the reality of it. Murphy's Pool says, sane. Socialism Saturday has damaged my brain. It has a propensity to do that, doesn't it, Murphy's Pool? I appreciate the super chat. That's just one thing you can find on the Substack for right now. We've been spy streaming a feminist psychology conference for the last couple of days. It has driven several of us insane, but we've seen some crazy stuff, man. We've seen some really crazy stuff. You can also listen to me talk to an actual revolutionary communist. All that is available on the Substack. And coming soon on the Substack, remember when I crowdfunded to go do an undercover journalism thing at a gender ideology conference, and I wasn't going to tell you when, and I wasn't going to tell you where? Well, I'm still not going to tell you when, and I'm still not going to tell you where, but coming very soon to the Substack is going to be some coverage undercover at a gender ideology conference where I'm going to go and record all their stuff and tell you what their guys are doing. And the best way to fund the work I'm doing, because I am 100% funded by you, is to become a paying supporter on the Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can support my work for $8 a month, $80 a year. And I can't do it without you guys. I would really like to get the membership numbers a little up. Listen, man, here's the thing. Chris Rufo this past week, who is not doing any undercover journalism on his own anymore, and I respect everything Chris Rufo does, more or less. So I'm not trying to shit talk Chris Rufo, but I will say this. Chris Rufo got like 200 people to sign up to support his work this week because he announced that the ACLU is targeting with a lawsuit. I don't begrudge him for anything, man, but the fact of the matter is Chris Rufo has major organizations supporting his work. He doesn't actually need the money for lawyers because he has major organizations supporting his work and doing everything he's doing. I don't have that. And I don't have that by design, because I never want to be beholden to a politically driven organization. My only job is to tell you the truth and to show you receipts. And so I'm not asking for 200 new supporters right now, although that would be really effing nice. I could fund a lot of undercover journalism with 200 new supporters, I'll tell you that. Actually, I mean, if I got enough supporters, I could literally just be permanently doing undercover journalism. There are so many events. I have a whole list of events that I want to go to. But the number of events that I'm able to go to and the number of events I'm able to cover directly depends on you guys stepping up and funding the work I'm doing by signing up on the Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year, getting new friends to come to Socialism Saturday, making one-time donations through my website, activelyunwoke.com/support. I will do as much of this stuff as you guys allow me to do, and I'm the only person on the internet covering a lot of the stories that I'm covering, stuff that you will not hear anywhere else. So please, if you can financially support the work I'm doing, let's get those numbers up. I want to do some more undercover journalism. I've got one project crowdfunded right now, but there are many more that I could do. And in my dream world, I get my Substack to a point where I have so many subscribers that if I find out about a gender ideology event or a socialist event, I can just pick up, buy a plane ticket and go. And then record everything and give it to the world so that we can show people what's really happening. Again, sign up on my Substack, $8 a month, $80 a year. I really do believe it. Bill, or do appreciate it rather. Dr. K, we need to let the queer Marxists know that the the revolutionary communists of America don't have any queer or trans representation. They need some diversity and inclusion. I think that's a great idea, Bill. I think we should really make sure that all of the queer Marxists know that the revolutionary communists of America don't really support their ideals. Because they don't. The revolutionary communists of America don't like identity politics. They don't like postmodernism. And so wouldn't it be a shame if the queer Marxists all joined the revolutionary communists of America to try to push their ideas through that organization? I think that'd be a pretty great idea myself. Nothing wrong with that. Let the infighting begin. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Unwoke Art store. That is unwokeart.com, and buying some sick merch. We have right now the brand new limited edition, only available this month, Make McCarthyism Great Again design. You can get it on t-shirts, hoodies, bags, even a shot glass if you want to. I think we need an anti-communist revolution in this country. I think Joseph McCarthy got a lot more right than he got wrong. And the things that he got wrong were mostly the fault of the CIA and the FBI. I think he's got a bad rap. I want to bring McCarthyism back. Time to make McCarthyism great again. I think we should totally embrace the idea of a second communist witch hunt in America. I don't think anything could go wrong with this plan. And I think we should all be wearing shirt designs advertising that all over, because really, this is a rallying cry that's worth having. You can get that in the Unwoke Art store right now. You can also get the new Unwoke Wiki design with the Tarot Card Plague Doctor. The Unwoke Wiki is where we are literally making a list of socialist activists and all their organizations. Yeah, you're goddamn right, I'm making a list. The way I fund that project is by selling merch through the Unwoke Art store. We are making the largest database of far-left activists that exists on the internet, being able to connect all of them and all of their names and all their organizations at the tips of our fingers with a single search. So if you want to support that, head over to the Unwoke Art store, pick up a shirt. Actually, you don't want a female cut shirt. The t-shirts that I have look great on women. Like, the female cut shirts are odd sizes. They don't fit. The fabric isn't good. Like, anytime I have had female shirts, I get complaints about them. So I'm not doing them anymore. This t-shirt is fine. It's a beautiful, soft jersey fabric. It fits really nicely. It is not boxy at all. I love these shirts, man. And so that's what you're going to get. I'm not doing this female design anymore. It never works out. And it always is a pain in the ass for me when I have to do returns and stuff like that. So no more female specific shirts. You get one choice of a t-shirt, and it's a really good one. And so just embrace it, yo. Just embrace it. No, bro, I don't mean psycho woke, because the only people who think the woke are crazy are moronic conservatives that want to lose to them. Only idiot conservatives think they're crazy. Because what does it mean if they're crazy? It means you're literally losing every institution in this country to crazy, man. It's the way it goes. Your lady lumps are going to look fine in the t-shirt that I've given you. I promise you that. Rottweiler said, if conservatives were smart, they would use the inevitable clash of economic and queer Marxists to their advantage instead of sabotaging them. Yeah, but conservatives aren't smart, are they, Rottweiler? They aren't smart indeed. One more announcement, guys. When you do sign up to support my work on the Substack, we do movie nights in the supporter Discord every Saturday at 8 p.m. or Sunday, excuse me. Not Saturday. Sunday at 8 p.m. Tomorrow we're watching actually a really great movie. We're doing Irish Movie Month, and we're watching this movie because it has Cillian Murphy in it, and Cillian Murphy is one of the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful men in the world. And he's in this movie called In Time with Justin Timberlake, and it's actually a really good movie. If you've never seen it before, it's a dystopian movie. It's really great. It's about, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's basically you stop aging at the age of 25, and then you have to earn extra years and stuff like that. It's a great movie. We are going to be watching it tomorrow night in the supporter Discord. You will get access to that when you do sign up as a supporter on the Substack. I will be sending out an email tomorrow that looks a little bit like this, not this specific one, but one that looks like this, in which that will have the Discord information, that will have information for the Zoom calls that we do every single week, all that good stuff. So I do hope you guys will be able to join us. Nuritu says, honestly, I lost a lot of respect for Rufo when we found out he was bad-mouthing you behind the scenes. Yeah, that kind of sucks. That kind of sucks. since I never said anything bad about him, so it does kind of suck. But what can you do? I can't control what people say. All I can do is show you guys the real radical revolutionary left and let you guys decide for yourself what you think. All right, guys, before we get into the video, and it looks like we will be watching the Revolutionary Communist tonight, so no Sophie. A Sophie-free evening. That's all right. I don't mind. Before we get into it, though, I do just want to go through the guidelines for Socialism Saturday. Now, if you have never joined me for Socialism Saturday before, let me know. We do love newbies for Socialism Saturday, but if you're new here or if it's been one of your first couple weeks, watching socialism can be a bit overwhelming, and I do run this a little bit differently than other people on the on the internet do their streams. First off, you are in a class. Yes, we drink beer. I've already started. Yes, we have a lot of fun. Yes, we mock them and do stuff like that, but never forget, you are in a class. I am the teacher of the class. You are a student in the class. There are also TAs in the class, mostly people who have wrenches in the chat, although there are other people that don't have wrenches that have been around a really long time. The purpose of this exercise is to learn. It is not to own the libs. That is not what we're doing here. Socialists speak in a coded language. They may use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. The very best way to understand how to speak socialist is by immersing yourself in their language. That is what we do every Saturday. If you have questions about the language, please ask them in the chat. I will also be pausing periodically to break things down and explain them and do pop quizzes in the chat so that we can all learn together and all make sure we're retaining as much of this information as possible. Number 2, our purpose of doing this is to understand the socialist. It is not, I repeat, not to debunk the socialist. And VSync over on Rumble, I don't know why you just randomly put Cloward Piven strategy in my chat, since that's not even what we're talking about. So maybe we can focus on things we're actually talking about. I don't know, bro. I know that people want to debunk the socialist. I know that you guys want to say that idea is crazy for reason X, Y, B, and Z. I know you want to say that's not the right definition of that word. I know you guys want to do all those things, but I need you to refrain from doing it, because every single time you guys expend energy on debunking the socialist, you are not spending energy on understanding the socialist. Debunking them accomplishes nothing. It just makes you feel morally superior. And while that may be important to you, that is not important to me, nor it is what we're doing here today. So keep the debunking to a minimum. If you do it too much, I'm going to tell you to cut that shit out, and I expect you to listen. Number 3, if you have questions in the chat, please ask them. I will answer as many questions as I can. I know the chat will help answer those questions. If you're chatting in over on Rumble, I do see the Rumble chat as well. However, I need you guys to keep in mind that I am literally driving myself crazy repeating the same things every single day of my life. And I don't just repeat them one time a day. I have to repeat them multiple times a day. What that means is that if I see you asking the same question over and over and over again because you are desperate for me to give you a different answer than the answer that I gave you last time, and yes, this happens so much that I actually have to make a note of it, at some point, I'm going to yell at you, because I don't want to be asked the same question over and over and over again when I'm already repeating myself repeatedly to the point where it drives me insane, okay? If you're asking a question, I expect it to be a good faith question. We will answer all of those. But if you are not listening to the answer and you don't want to accept the answer, that is a you problem. That is not a me problem. And it goes against everything that we're doing here. And at some point, I'm going to tell you to cut it out. If you are a long-term viewer, I expect you to know more. I have higher expectations for you to learn this material than most people do on the internet, because no one else is teaching it like this, guys. And the purpose of you learning this material is not just that we have fun with it on Saturday. The purpose of you learning this material is that you can teach other people. Reagan, who has been watching socialism with me since the beginning, is now on Twitter owning James Lindsay's audience, because Reagan is able to explain things about what the far left believes that James Lindsay's audience has no idea about, and she's doing it all on her own. I don't have to spoon feed that shit to her. Why? Because she came and she listened, and now she's paying it forward, and she's out there teaching other people what this stuff means. I want to create an army of people that are able to go out into the world and teach everyone else what this stuff means, because it can't all just come from me. It has to come from all of us. The moment that we can create an army of people that are out there pushing these ideas is the moment that we start to be able to get more and more people to scale up, with more and more people learning this language. And learning this language is the key to inoculating yourself from their ideas. All right? Reagan is so good at teaching this stuff that James Lindsay literally blocked her for it. Try to wrap your head around that. Try to wrap your head around that. Number 4, normal chat rules apply. Don't be a dick. You are in my house. You will not insult me. You will not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because this is my house. But you will not come in here and be shit posting and disruptive. And if you do, I will tell you to stop. Number 2, no whining. I don't want to hear it, guys. I don't have kids for a reason. I certainly don't want to hear whining from adults on the internet who are upset that I told them to cut out the bullshit. All right? Don't be a dick. No whining. We're going to get along just fine. Lastly, if you believe that I'm wrong and you're right based on some bullshit thing that you heard from James Lindsay probably, then you can try to argue with me, but it's probably not going to go well for you. I have watched more of this content than literally anyone else in the world that I know of. If you think you know someone that's watched more of this content than me, then tell me who they are and introduce them to me. But right now, what my understanding is that I've watched more of this than anyone else in the world. There is a very rare occasion where someone is able to successfully argue with me. Doesn't happen that often. So if you're going to try it, you can bring your A game. But no one is forcing you to be here. No one's forcing you to consume this content. If you don't like me, if you don't like my tone, if you don't like the way I teach, you are welcome to GTFO and go learn this from someone else. Oh, wait, there's no one else doing this on the internet. So you're going to be out of luck there. We have got our first conservative here. I'm a bit confused. Are you pushing socialism or are you pushing against socialism? Brenda, go and check my Twitter profile, girl. We need you to do this on your own, Brenda. We need that, okay? All right, guys, that's all we have. Now we have decided to watch the Radical Revolutionary Communist Origins of the Family. Let's see. Everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Please make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you are watching on. Now let's learn the origins of the family, a Marxist perspective according to the revolutionary communists.
Speak in 45 minutes on a very, very big subject. I could talk for a lot longer, so 45 minutes or so is a dangerous concept. But I will try my best, at least to give a taste of what Marxists have to say on this question. Now, this is about the origin of the family. I'm not going to just sit here and repeat what Engels said, because Engels wrote a very interesting book, which you can all read and study. And I hope you either have done, are doing, or will do. But the question is this: has the family, as we know it today, always existed? Has it been like this from the very early days of human society? I.e., has it always been a patriarchal family with a dominant male figure?
Why are they saying the family is a patriarchal family with a dominant male figure? Why are they framing it like that? Yes, Gloria, this is the Canadian version of the new Revolutionary Communist Party. He just said that the family is a what did he say? a patriarchal family with a dominant male figure. Why are the socialists saying that the nuclear family is a patriarchal family with a dominant male figure? Because the socialists believe that the gender binary was created by capitalism. The gender binary is the patriarchy, and that is what the patriarchy references, the gender binary, which upholds capitalism. Very good. The patriarch. Well, this is important, guys. Although the patriarchy does uphold capitalism, this is important. Capitalism came first. The gender binary came second. Okay? So it's not that the patriarchy or the gender binary upholds capitalism so much as capitalism created the gender binary. So I see a lot of people saying that the gender binary upholds capitalism. You got to reverse it. Capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the gender binary. The gender binary put men in the workplace, women in the home. Men make money in the workplace. Women in the home do the unpaid labor of raising the nuclear family and through the future generation of proletarian workers. That's what the patriarchy is. Capitalism came first, then the gender binary, which is the patriarchy, then the nuclear family. And it's not a big deal, but it's important to be specific in this, okay? I'm still seeing wrong answers for some reason. I'm still seeing wrong answers. No. Capitalism came first, gender binary came second, nuclear family came third. Then the nuclear family reproduces capitalism through social reproduction theory. So it's like it makes a cycle. Capitalism, gender binary, nuclear family, and then it rounds back up to capitalism again. It's like a big circle.
With a dominant male figure, as we have known it in recorded history, or is it a phenomenon which has changed and evolved over time?
Reagan, I actually have a diagram for that. Let me show you guys this real quick. I actually have a diagram for this. It's in the How to Speak Socialist presentation. One sec. Because it's relevant, so I'm going to pull it up real quick. Hang on, it just takes me 1 second to find this. Because it's a big slide deck. Guys, if you have not seen my How to Speak Socialist presentation, head over to the Substack and you will find the video under the How to Speak Socialist section. Let me show you. This is what it is. This is what it is right here. Capitalism created the gender binary, which created the nuclear family, which reproduces capitalism. You guys see how that works? Capitalism, which is whiteness, created the gender binary, which created the nuclear family. It's a vicious cycle. And so basically, the reason that this is important is because socialists believe that they need to disrupt the nuclear family to prevent the reproduction of capitalism. Because social reproduction theory, which is another topic James Lindsay hasn't covered, although he claims he has, but he really hasn't at all. Social reproduction theory basically says that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. So when socialists are talking about controlling the means of production, they quite literally believe that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism, which is why they are attacking parental rights in the first place. The attacks on parental rights, also gender ideology being pushed onto kids, all of that is designed to abolish the gender binary and attack the nuclear family. That's what that is. And this is why, guys, I am so adamant that I am not going to buy into this Gnostic sex cult bullshit that James Lindsay is trying to sell people in order to rile them up and piss them off so that he can make more money. This is not about a Gnostic sex cult. It is very, very clear when you listen to actual effing socialists that they believe that capitalism created the gender binary, which created the nuclear family, which upholds capitalism. And the goal of queer Marxism or queer theory is to abolish the gender binary and to attack the nuclear family because the ultimate goal of the radical revolutionary left is to abolish capitalism. And those are two of the pillars that they need to disrupt in order to abolish capitalism. I just want to do a quick pause here. Does anyone have questions about that? Because I will spend more time explaining this right now if people have questions about this. I know people who watch every week hear me say this all the time, but there might be new people here. I want to make sure this is crystal clear for everyone. The number one goal of the left is to abolish capitalism, which they define as private property ownership. They will use any means they can to abolish capitalism. That is the goal. This is not about a Gnostic sex cult. It is only and exclusively about abolishing capitalism. And Paul, that doesn't fucking matter, bro. I'm very sorry. This does not matter. The reason that James Lindsay is saying it's a Gnostic sex cult is because sex cults sell books to outraged moms. But what it does not do is save their kids from being taken away by the state due to attack on parental rights. Tayton says, biologism. Yep. Thank you, Tayton. Appreciate it. So if people have questions about this, I'm more than happy to spend some more time on it. But if people don't understand this, no. See, this is the conservative reaction. It's all about sex. That's all part of it. No. Conservatives with their conspiracy theory bullshit are going to get more people's kids taken away. You guys think this is all fun and games and shit posting on the internet and owning the libs. This bullshit that is constantly distracting from what the real issue is going to result in people getting their children taken away from them. And if your kids are the ones who are taken away, then you're probably going to wish you had spent a little less time owning the libs on the internet, bro. I promise you. All right, let me know if you guys have questions about that. I'm more than happy to answer them.
Was there a period in which there was a different kind of family? And in the future, could there be a different kind of family to the one that we have known? Now, in today's academic world, which is unfortunately dominated by idealist philosophical outlooks such as postmodernism, the evolutionist and materialist approach of Engels and Morgan that he based himself on is considered superseded. It's old. It's no longer valid. We have studies which prove that the family has always existed as the nuclear family. Malinowski, a famous anthropologist of the first half of the 20th century, states quite bluntly, the nuclear family has always existed and will always exist. The question is this, is that true? Was there a phase which we would define as matrilineal? Very often you hear people talking about matriarchy. Now, matriarchy means rule of women, as patriarchy means rule.
Hang on. Oh no, Samurai says, I have a question. Do economic Marxists believe the same thing about the nuclear family and the gender binary as queer Marxists? Well, we're literally listening to the economic Marxists right now. The Revolutionary Communist Party that just launched in America, but this is the Canadian version of it, these are mostly economic Marxists. So we're literally going to find out what they believe tonight. But the fact, listen, man, Marx and Engels wrote in the Communist Manifesto that they want to abolish the nuclear family. The economic Marxists are literally giving a presentation, and this was only 9 months ago. This is a relatively new presentation called The Origins of the Family, a Marxist Perspective, with the specific goal of advancing the ideas about abolishing the nuclear family. They believe the same thing. He's talking about capitalism and the gender binary and the patriarchy. It's the same thing. They are not different. We know that based on their actions. All socialists believe this, guys. They believe because the number one goal is always to abolish capitalism, and that's true of economic Marxists. That's also true of cultural Marxists. Anyone who tells you that cultural Marxists do not want to abolish capitalism is lying to you. And they believe that the nuclear family is the thing that stands in their way of doing it. But it's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Of men. We're not talking about matriarchy. It would be a false debate to discuss that, because there wasn't such a thing as a matriarchal society. There was an egalitarianism of hunter-gatherer societies in which you had matrilineality, i.e. the tracing of descent and the organization of family groups around the women. And we argue, as Marxists, and as Marx did, that there was an early phase of human society which he defined as primitive communism. By that, we don't mean a primitive Joseph Stalin or a primitive Soviet Union. We mean a society where there was no private property, where there were no classes, where the means of production was so undeveloped, and humans lived from hunter-gathering.
So I just want to emphasize what he just said is that what Marxists believe is that there was a time in the world when private property did not exist. The definition of capitalism that Marxists use, that the left uses, is private property. The other day, I asked a question on Twitter. I asked, what is the definition of I asked, what is the definition of capitalism? That was all I said. What do you believe the left's definition of capitalism is? Put it out on my Twitter. 90% of the people who answered the question got it wrong. I bring this up because there are an awful lot of people, and many of them on the right, who think that they understand. They think they understand the socialist left. They think they understand. I hear this all the time. Carlin, of course they're attacking capitalism. Duh, we already know that. The very next question of that is, how do you think they define capitalism? The definitions are all over the place, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what their definition of capitalism is, which is private property ownership. This is not about crony capitalism. This is not about them being pissed off that you have more money than them. This is not about corruption. This is not about any of those things. The only definition of capitalism that matters is private property ownership. And they're telling you that they believe there was a time before the nuclear family existed when private property ownership was not a thing. That is what they're trying to abolish. What they mean by private property is your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own a business, your intellectual property, any apartments that you own that you rent out, any Airbnbs that you own that you rent out, because those aren't going to exist anymore. They also mean your parental rights and your individual liberties. They believe that parental rights are private property. That's why they attack parental rights, guys. It's not a Gnostic sex cult. And this is why what James Lindsay is doing is so goddamn dangerous. Because James Lindsay is riling up hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions of people, who believe that the left is attacking parental rights because of a Gnostic sex cult. And nothing you can do will get them to dispense with this idea that it's a Gnostic sex cult. It's not. The reason the left is attacking parental rights is they believe that parental rights are a form of private property ownership, and that it is their job to liberate the children from being the property of their parents. They believe that children should have more than one set of parents, that the community should parent the children. That is why they're talking about parental rights. And ultimately, the goal of attacking parental rights is to abolish capitalism, because attacking parental rights means is trying to disrupt the nuclear family that is reproducing capitalism. That's what's important. Anything about a Gnostic sex cult has no relevance to this. And if people don't start understanding this, they're going to lose their kids. We're already seeing people losing their kids because of this bullshit. Melanie, this is not even real. This isn't real. This is another conservative conspiracy theory. When you listen to these guys, they never talk about this. This is a conservative conspiracy theory in order to rile people up and make money from outrage porn. Do you guys understand why it's dangerous that conservative influencers are lying to their audiences about this? This is not just me being pissed off over nothing. This is not just me having a tone over nothing. I am seeing every single day thousands of people completely confused about what the left is actually doing. And that confusion is going to lead to people losing their kids, because conservatives are all spun up over things that are not real. The Gnostic sex cult is the modern equivalent of primitive man trying to understand thunder. They are making things up that have no basis in reality at all. But it sounds really good and it feels really good, and they get to really get pissed off on the internet about it. That queering of the American Family book that Logan Lansing and James Lindsay just released could end up being a net loss. That book, which argues the Gnostic sex cult theory, could result in more people losing their kids. The Gnostic sex cult is literally the conservative retardia. I'm sorry if people are offended about my tone about this, but this, like, I placated this bullshit for long enough. This is now dangerous. It's a goddamn satanic panic. And everyone's just going along with it as though it's normal and hinged into reality. This is not normal. This is not real. This is not hinged into reality. I have watched more Abolish the Family content than anyone else on the fucking internet, and it's not there. It's not there. When you guys are shilling a conspiracy theory, I will get angry. When you guys are confusing more people because you're refusing to hinge into reality, I will get angry, because this bullshit is going to impact real people in the real world, and everyone's just acting like reading on the internet is going to solve the goddamn problem when it's not. Every single person who believes the Gnostic sex cult conspiracy theory is distracting from what the core issue is. Every single one.
Now, I've read so many different anthropologists, some of them not exactly left-wing, who all agree that when you look at hunter-gatherer societies, even today, they are extremely egalitarian, far more egalitarian than any other form of society. Now, I've got an interesting quote, which I put in my article, which is from Leslie White. Well, Leslie White is an American anthropologist.
This is exactly right. This is exactly right. We have literally watched and documented hundreds of hours of this stuff in the real world. I have literally gone undercover at their private events that are not recorded behind closed doors, and I promise you, there ain't no Gnostic goddamn sex cult. I've seen a lot of crazy shit at socialist events. I have never seen anything remotely resembling a Gnostic sex cult. If they were actually doing this, We would have seen it by now. I just don't know how to get through to people on this. People wonder why I lie. Why I lie, Jesus Christ. People wonder why I yell. People wonder why I have a fucking tone. People wonder why I get angry. It's because I don't know how to get through to people on this. I really don't. I feel like I've tried to be nice. I tried to be nice for a long ass time. Melanie, I'm sorry. You're not hinged into reality, girl. I'm sorry. The queer activists are the same people, Melanie. It's like you get these people that think they know what's going on. And their minds are so fucked up about it because James Lindsay has been putting out this bullshit for years and it has confused everyone. And it's like, if you don't go and smack them in the fucking head and say, like, I feel like I'm trying to grab people and shake them and say, will you wake up? You're going to lose your goddamn kids, but you're more interested in reading about a sex cult that doesn't even exist? And in the meantime, you're riling up all these other people? And the entire point of what the actual problem is has been completely lost and completely obfuscated because of all the conservative conspiracy theory bullshit. But no, you can't get through to them. I can yell, I can scream, and they just go, you're so mean, Curlin. Why won't you just let us believe what we want to believe? Because your kids are going to get taken away, and it's going to be your goddamn fault when it happens. I'm sorry. I tried to tell you. I tried to be nice. I tried to be civil. I tried to show you video. I tried to have other people explain it to you. I literally made fucking diagrams. I made infographics. I wrote articles for years, and you wouldn't listen. And now I'm in your face, and I'm fucking yelling. If you don't start taking this seriously, you are going to lose your kids, and you still don't listen. Challenge to conservatives. Show us radical Marxists explicitly endorsing maps without mentioning Foucault and his campaign to end the age of consent. It'll never happen. If it were going to happen, we would have seen it. It will never happen. When socialists are trying to do things, they talk about it all the time. If there was video of this, we would have seen it already.
He was head of the anthropology department at Michigan University in the post-war period, who I would say is very close to a Marxist approach, although sometimes a bit mechanical. But he wrote a book called The Evolution of Culture, The Development of Civilization to the Fall of Rome. He refers to this question of primitive communism, and he says this: so menacing did the theory of primitive communism become, apparently, that members of 3 anthropological schools have felt called upon to scotch it. Lowy of the Boas school has attacked it repeatedly. Malinowski, a leader of the functionalist school, branded it perhaps the most leading fallacy there is in social anthropology. Lowy has been commended by Catholic scholars for his criticism of the theory of primitive communism, and through this, his opposition to socialist doctrine.
So Brian asks, so he's arguing the patriarchal family and capitalism made us evolve out of the Stone Age. Well, not exactly. He's arguing that that the lack of private property and the lack of the nuclear family is the natural state of man. That's what he's arguing. He's arguing there was a time before capitalism and the nuclear family, and then everything was privatized, and then these false social constructs got put in place. He's arguing the natural state of man is to be collectivized, essentially. Brock, I guarantee you, Brock is one of the morons that pushes the Gnostic sex cult idea. I guarantee you, if I wasted the time to play the video that you just put in my chat, it would have nothing to do with what we're actually talking about, bro. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let me go find it. Let me go find the video that Brock is trying to convince us is a real thing. And I promise you, this is typical conservative bullshit. It will have nothing to do, and I mean nothing to do, with what's actually going on. I don't know if I'm able to access it here. Nope, not showing up. Let's see. Let me see. Hang on. Yeah, bro, I can't show that. I can't click on that. So I'm sorry. I tried to show your video. It ain't gonna work. I'm not gonna type all that out. Sorry. Not going to fucking happen. But I guarantee you it would have nothing to do with what this actually is. Maybe I can just try one more thing. Hang on. Let me try getting in. Because I don't want to do what James Lindsay and his followers do, which is pinky swear, trust me, bro. I already know Brock doesn't know what he's talking about because I've been arguing with him on Twitter for the better part of the last 2 hours. So I know for a fact he has no fucking clue what he's talking about. But let me just be ethically honest about it. I can try again. Brock, put that video in the chat again, please. I've got it up on my screen. I'll be able to click on it this time. Put the video in the chat again. I'm not typing in that whole URL, dude. Put the video in the chat again. We'll wait. Got it. Got it. Let's see what Brock wants us to see that will inevitably have nothing to do with what Rottweiler... Oh, it's a 15-second clip. Okay. Check this out. Here is the conservative evidence. You guys ready for it? Here is the conservative evidence. A 15-second clip from a TED Talk. Where is this TED Talk? Where is that exactly? Hang on. Is this over in Sweden or something? Where is this TED Talk? Where is that? Netherlands. The Netherlands. This is the conservative evidence to what Rottweiler asked for. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was 15. I thought it was 15 seconds. No, it's 17 minutes. Okay. Well, let's see.
At some point last year, this article showed up in newspapers all over the world. The police had taken down this massive child pornography network. It was on the darknet and it had nearly 90,000 members. Lots and lots of illegal material was shared and lots of messages were sent through the network. Every day, every hour, every second. People from all over the world were logging into this network anonymously, which makes it extremely difficult.
So we have no idea who this person is. This person doesn't sound like a socialist to me. And this is about some dark web porn ring, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Brock, you just proved you are the moron that I've been saying you are for the past 2 hours, bro. I'm not going to watch the full 17 minutes of this because I already know this person is not a radical revolution. I tried to explain to this asshole that we are only interested in radical revolutionary socialists in the United States. So who does he send me? Some progressive college professor from the Netherlands from 5 years ago? It's not related to any point we've made. It's not related to what Rottweiler actually asked for. This has nothing to do with anything that is currently going on. We're not going to waste time watching this. But the reason I wanted to do this exercise, and I'm thankful that he gave us the opportunity to do so, is to prove emphatically that anyone arguing James Lindsay's points has no evidence to back them up. Because when you ask them for evidence, here is what they send you. Chad says, Melanie is a psychologist and criminologist and combines both in her work for the Dutch National Police. So what Brock did, because he heard us talking about his Gnostic sex cult, which is his favorite topic because he's fucking obsessed with James Lindsay and all he listens to is James Lindsay, and James Lindsay has convinced him that there is a Gnostic sex cult. What he did is he typed pedophilia into YouTube, he found this video that has pedophilia in the title, didn't bother to watch it at all, just hoped that we wouldn't actually look at it to find out what it was, and then delivered us a piece of evidence that had no basis in reality and no grounding to what we were talking about. Do you guys see how this game works? Do you guys see how people like Brock, because they're obsessed with hero worshiping everything James Lindsay says, rely on the fact that no one else but us are actually looking at the evidence? And they think, if I just send them a video with pedophilia in the title, then I'm going to prove my point. He didn't even bother to watch the video. Do you guys see how this works? And he thinks he owned me with that, when all of us who have been in this for years can look at this and be like, bro, come on. Like, do you think we're fucking stupid? Do you think we're stupid? That was a fun experiment. Now, Brock, show us the timestamp of her pushing queer Marxism and map stuff. We'll wait. I still have the video up. If you want to prove your point, bro, show us a fucking timestamp of her pushing queer Marxism and map stuff. Back to the video. Thank you for allowing me that interlude.
And then he adds, it would appear that an effort was being made to make the world safe for private property. You see, if you accept the idea that there was a phase of human development where there was no private property, then the logical conclusion would be that the phase of human society where there is private property may not be a permanent state of affairs. It may only be a temporary period of several thousands of years, of course, but a period which could lead to a new form of society without property again. That prospect terrifies the capitalist class, obviously.
So what I was saying before Brock rudely interrupted us with evidence that had nothing to do with anything is that what the Marxists are arguing, what the radical revolutionary left is arguing, is that there was a period in time in human history where private property didn't exist. And then private property was created as a social construct to create a society in which some people have power and some people don't. People who have power own more private property than other people. They have more access to resources, etc., etc. And now he's saying, and if we accept the idea that there was a time in human society when private property did not exist, then maybe private property ownership, which is the definition of capitalism, is just a temporary thing in which we can revert back to our natural state, which is no private property. And remember, guys, when they say no private property, they mean your parental rights. I just want to go back and listen to this again because we got distracted there. So I want us to hear this fully. I apologize for taking a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it.
He has been commended by Catholic scholars for his criticism of the theory of primitive communism, and through this, his opposition
Thank you, Aaron.
to
I
socialist
appreciate that.
doctrines. And then he adds, it would appear that an effort was being made to make the world safe for private property. You see, if you accept the idea that there was a phase of human development where there was no private property, then the logical conclusion would be that the phase of human society where there is private property may not be a permanent state of affairs. It may only be a temporary period of several thousands of years, of course, but a period which could lead to a new form of society without property again. That prospect terrifies the capitalist class, obviously, because all their wealth is based on the survival of capitalism. Now, we need to understand
all of their wealth is based on the survival of capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership. Yes. So this is what the socialists that claim to be anarchists are trying to do. Exactly, political nerd. Exactly. They're not anarchists. So there's no such thing as anarcho-communism. I'm sorry. That's not a real thing. Anarcho-capitalism is a real thing. Anarcho-communism is not a real thing. Because what they're talking about is resetting back to a time where everything was owned by the collective, and the collective means the community. The community is the party. The community is the comrades. But that's exactly right.
Where oppression originated. Because the question is this: is it in men's nature to be aggressive and violent and dominant? Because if it is, which some feminists do maintain that position, well, we're all on a loser, aren't we? If we are by nature, if I by nature should be going home and beating my wife, I don't do that actually, but if that's my nature and that is my instinct, well, it's pretty hopeless, isn't it, to struggle for the emancipation of women and for equality in society, because it's inbuilt. Or is this aggression which we see in a certain period of human development a product of something more concrete, a product of class society with the property that came with it? Now, the answer to those two questions will determine actually whether we can actually fight for a better society, or whether we are condemned forever and ever to a permanent conflict between men and women. Now, Engels wrote his famous book on the origin of the family in 1884, and he based it mainly on Morgan, Lewis Henry Morgan's book, Ancient Society, which was published in 1877. Now, when I started looking at this, I thought, I want to see what Morgan had to say. I read Ancient Society, and you can see where Engels gets his ideas. And one of the most important ideas that he comes up with, and by the way, Morgan refers to the idea that the peoples were living in, he called it communism in living. Now, in 1877, nobody can accuse him of having any illusions in the Soviet Union. Communism there was no country like that. What he was referring to was communism in the way people lived, i.e. an egalitarian work.
Hang on. Rich, we don't do this stuff here. Rein it down, bro. We're here to learn. We are not here to engage in outrage bullshit. I appreciate you being here. I want you to be here. I want you to learn. But this is not helpful, okay? Just relax, listen, and we will teach you.
Working together socially, collaborating in a collective manner, consuming in a collective manner. And Morgan, I think his most important contribution was he developed the idea that it was the emergence of property which changed the relations between men and women. It was the emergence of property.
It was the emergence of property that changed the relations between men and women. What that means is capitalism created the gender binary. Capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the patriarchy. Before capitalism, before private property, there was a different relationship between men and women than existed after capitalism and private property. Does everyone understand that?
Accumulation of wealth in the hands of men, which led to the emergence of the patriarchal family, i.e., no longer the egalitarianism of early days, but a society where men dominated in the family. And this was due to the desire to pass on one's accumulated wealth. I think that's an important contribution by Morgan. Now, who was Morgan? Morgan had the destiny to become the figure loved by communists and Marxists, because he gave the basic outline of the evolution of society in the family. But he was no communist himself.
Well,
I mean, he was.
Hang on. We need to stop bringing this up. Guys, there is no distinction between personal property and private property. Anyone who tells you there is trying to sell you something. What socialists mean when they say private property is your home, your land, your business, your intellectual property, your rental properties, your parental rights, your individual liberties. That is what they mean. They do not mean your fucking cell phone. They do not mean a camera. They do not mean a pile of books. The only thing that matters is socialists want to abolish your home, your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to have a business, your ability to have rental properties, your ability to have parental rights, and your individual liberties. They want that all gone. Every single time people talk about the distinction between personal property and private property, they are overlooking what socialists define as private property. So I am begging you guys to stop buying into it. Just don't bring it up. And if someone else brings it up, what I need you to say is, that's bullshit, and let me explain to you why that's bullshit, because they define as private property your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your intellectual property, your business, your rental properties, your parental rights, your individual liberties. All of those are defined as private property under this ideology. Every time a socialist brings up the idea of personal property, they are lying. Every time James Lindsay and Logan Lansing bring up the idea of personal property, they are deflecting. And I've seen them both do this. Logan Lansing in particular has done this. Logan Lansing tried to dismiss video I was showing him of these people by saying, you don't understand the distinction between personal property and private property. No, Logan, you do not understand how the socialist left defines private property. Every time someone brings up personal property, I need you guys to be right there to say, let me explain to you what they mean when they say private property. I know I'm getting pedantic on this. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but this is really important because I've run into this argument a lot and it's bullshit every single time. Every time. And when you actually define what socialists mean by private property, the arguments about personal property versus private property go away completely. They don't know how to answer this. And we have them on video saying all of this. So this is not something that's in dispute.
As a well-to-do American, he was a lawyer. He invested in the railroads, in the mines. And his ideal of the highest form of society was the United States. Because the United States didn't have a king, didn't have an aristocracy, had a democracy. It was the highest form of society. And he actually says that on more than one occasion. So why is it that he became this figure so discussed and studied by communists? Why is it that the early Social Democratic Party of Germany or the early days of the Communist Party in Russia, all party activists knew about the family structure of early societies that Morgan referred to? Well, because he provided the analysis, which was the basis for Engels' text. Now, in that period, there were several anthropologists. Morgan was one of them. Tyler, Lubbock, Spencer, Maine, there were others. They all had an evolutionist approach to the history of society and the family, etc. Now, Morgan got to know the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, I think you pronounce it. It was a chance occurrence. He had an interest. He got to know them. He was actually adopted by the Seneca. They went through the actual ceremony of adoption. The reason being, he took an interest because he was a lawyer. These people were being defrauded of land. They were in conflict with private land companies that would do up to all kinds of tricks to basically steal their land legally. So he took an interest. But by taking this interest, he got to know them. He spent time with them. What he struck upon was the kinship terminology of these people, mother, father, and how they were used. Then he also he struck upon the rules for mating and reproduction, and who you could marry and who you couldn't marry. He noticed, for instance, that they would call all the mothers of a certain generation, all the women of a certain generation, mother, all the fathers, father. He saw that there was a structure within a tribe in which you had gens or clans in which you could.
Do you see how they're trying to reframe the family? They're saying they were calling everyone in the indigenous tribes. They were calling everyone mother. They were calling everyone father. It takes a community to raise the children. I have heard Sophie Lewis say, I heard her say this at the Socialism Conference, that children should have at least 3 sets of parents, because the reason that parental rights are private property is that they believe that the community should be responsible for the children. Not that the parents should be responsible for the children, but that the community should be responsible for the children. That there are multiple mothers, that there are multiple fathers, and that biological kinship does not matter. That's what they're trying to create. That's why abolishing private property fundamentally means abolishing your parental rights.
You could mate only outside of your clan. You could not mate with the women of your clan because they were considered your sisters. It was a certain, in effect, it was a kind of incest taboo that had been established somehow in the long distant past. But he noticed there was such a different kinship relationship and terminology. And he took an interest in it. He described it. He actually wrote a book, The League of the Iroquois, The League of the Haudenosaunee, in which he describes all this. He then he develops this interest, and he's curious to understand where it could come from. Later in life, he did field work further west.
Oh, look, the James Lindsay stand that tried to give us evidence that was completely unrelated to the evidence that we talked about just came out and said, they don't come out and say it, but they sure do push it. Okay, bro, in what fucking universe? We asked for one very specific thing. If there was any video evidence to support your argument, you provided us a video that had nothing to do with what we asked for. No, bro, no. You're done. I'm blocking you on Twitter. I don't want to hear from you again. I am bored with you. You are providing us with no information at all that is relevant to what we're asking for because you are obsessed with sucking James Lindsay's dick and pushing the Gnostic sex cult bullshit conspiracy theory that you have no evidence for. There is nothing, bro. And any more discussion about this is just a distraction. We do not peddle in bullshit here. We peddle in reality.
West. You went to visit other indigenous peoples who spoke completely different languages to the Iroquois of the Northeast. And to his surprise, or not so much surprise, he discovered similar kinship relations. So he started to draw the conclusion, maybe these peoples, this goes back much further into the distant past of humanity. And he drew the conclusion these people must have come from Asia. And did they bring it from Asia? Maybe they did. So then he proceeded to try and study the kinship terminology of peoples around the world. And he used the Smithsonian Institute and the diplomatic network, say, of the United States.
Rottweiler says, if you can't show it, then you don't know it, Brock. We want specific timestamps where she makes the connection between queer Marxism and maps. He can't provide that because he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. And this is why, guys, listen, you never need to take my word for anything. I will always show you video. You can watch the video and decide for yourself what it says. But I will never come on the internet and say, pinky swear, trust me, bro, it's definitely a Gnostic sex cult, I swear. Scout's honor. I can't show you video of it being a Gnostic sex cult. I can't show any proof of it being a Gnostic sex cult. But I tried to pinky swear. Don't you trust a pinky swear? You guys want to believe in, if you guys want to worship at the altar of bullshit, I guess that's your prerogative. You are allowed to worship at the altar of bullshit, but that is not what I'm doing here.
States to send out a questionnaire to people all over the world. And he waited for them to come back. It took a few years, but he started getting back questionnaires about the Tamils in India, the Aborigines of Australia, and other peoples. And up pops up the structure of the tribe with the clans, the prohibition of mating within the clan, but you had to marry outside in another group. And this started to confirm his idea that maybe it does go much, much further back. So he looked into this. Now, I think he made a major contribution to our understanding of the evolution of society. Now, he didn't get everything right. He actually literally believed that when people said mother to everybody, they thought they were their mother. He drew some conclusions from that. Going further back, he said it was a remnant of a previous society of group marriage, etc., which subsequent studies seem to show was a mistake on his part. He did make mistakes. How could not a man of that period not make mistakes? Even Engels in 1891, in the preface to the 1891 edition of The Origin of the Family, says in the 14 years since The Ancient Society was published, subsequent studies have disproven some of what he said. Engels would not have been closed to further discoveries and studies. It's not a dogmatic question. You base yourself on the latest science. In 1877, Morgan seemed to be the highest development in that field. But the conclusions Engels comes to is yes, some of what he said has been disproven, but the core idea hasn't. Now, when I started looking at this, I thought, I read so many who just took it for granted. Morgan and Engels were wrong. It's been superseded. No, it's false. It's false. It doesn't. I thought I'm going to read more and more and more. And I must say, I've come to the same conclusion.
Bro, this is a communist. This is a revolutionary communist that's a member of this party. Your own party defines the nuclear family as the means of production of capitalism, bro. These aren't the postmodernists. These are not the queer Marxists. This is your party. Your party defines the nuclear family as the means of production of capitalism. That's why they want to abolish the nuclear family. That is why Marx and Engels want to abolish the nuclear family. It is the means of production of capitalism. That's literally what he's explaining in this video, bro. That's what social reproduction theory is. You don't get, bro, we're watching him explain it right now. This is your party talking about the nuclear family, talking about how there was a period before private property existed, there was a period before the nuclear family existed, and then this stuff all came along. That's what social reproduction theory is, bro. Look it up. Why do we know this, but you don't? Why do we know more about your belief system than you?
That Engels came to in 1891. Yes, a lot of studies, but the core idea that the family has evolved over time based on technique, the development of technique is valid. It's valid. Because technique, if we think about it, the way we procure our food has changed. Hunter-gatherers, at a very early stage, they hunt and
no, as I very clearly stated, we are talking about social reproduction theory. You are welcome to Google that, or you can go back and watch the previous episodes that we have done about social reproduction theory. I'm not going to do your homework for you, bro.
And they gather. It's very simple. Now, before I go on to that, they have done studies, quite recent studies, on hunter-gatherer societies, hunter-gatherer groups in sub-Saharan Africa. And they've looked at the contribution to the diet of the overall family group of the women who tend to do the gathering, and not always, and the men who tend to do the hunting, although women also.
He does know what we're talking about. Yes, the reproduction of the wage laborer. Exactly. Social reproduction theory states that the nuclear family produces the next generation of proletarian worker. Very good. What that means is the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism, and in order to abolish capitalism, you have to disrupt the production of capitalism via the nuclear family, which is why you guys want to abolish it in the first place. That means the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism. I'm glad we got to the same place.
Have been known to hunt. And they find that actually the women contribute more to the diet than the men. More is procured through hunting, through gathering.
Nah, bro, you're the one that's not getting
roots,
it.
Nuts,
sorry.
Fruits,
and we're not
plants,
going to
herbs. In fact,
we're not going to argue with, bro. I'm not going to ban the communist, but I'm going to ask that people not engage with him and don't interact with him and don't ask him questions. Because right now what we're seeing is a communist in my chat that is here to lie to you. This is what he tried to do when he talked to me the other day. He tried to gaslight me into believing that if I did these Socialism Saturdays, that was going to result in a lone gunman shooting him in my name. You can go back and listen to the conversation. Socialists always lie. Socialists always gaslight. That is why he's here, is to lie and to gaslight. So can we please keep that in mind when we're interacting with him and when we're asking him questions? That is his purpose for being here, guys. And he's a nice guy. I don't wish him any ill will. I don't want anyone to shoot him, but you have to keep in mind what he's doing here.
it eventually leads to the women being the ones who actually developed early horticulture, i.e. the idea of planting some of these seeds and not having to go and foraging for them. Now, if you think about it, if the women are contributing at least 50% and more of the diet, there's a material basis for the egalitarian nature of hunter-gatherer societies. The men contribute, yes, but they're not the woman who has to look, the typical idea would be, it's like, the Flintstones were like us. They're Stone Age, but they're like us. They all have nuclear families or the rest of it. Primitive women of early societies had to look for a man to keep them, just like they have to today, don't they? Don't they, young women of today? Aren't you all looking for the ideal man that will keep you and feed you and clothe you as they should? You laugh, why? Because it's changed. And yet, for centuries, that was the idea. It wasn't so long ago that an American man in the 60s still would have considered it his duty to earn enough money to keep his wife at home where she should be, and he had to be the bread earner. It's changed. I'll go back to that later on. You see, the family does change, in spite of them saying that it's always been the same. It's changed in our living memory. But there was a material basis to the egalitarianism of hunter-gatherer societies. That's been proven beyond doubt. Even today, the ones they look at, there is a greater. They've done studies on gender inequality between farmers and hunter-gatherers. And hey, what appears? There's a greater gender inequality amongst farmers than there is amongst hunter-gatherers. What are farmers? Farming is what starts the process of the emergence of classes. Not immediately, Early farming
What?
did not immediately produce that. The traditions of egalitarianism
Farming started the production of the classes? I hadn't heard that one before. Okay, continue.
continued in early farming society. In fact, if you look at the gens within a tribe.
No. This is not right. They want to abolish the nuclear family. They do not want to, no one has ever said they want to abolish all types of families. They are open to any different type of family that is not the nuclear biological family based on biological kinship.
The land, even when first of all, in the early days, it would have been a territory in which you could hunt and others could not hunt in that territory. When it becomes horticulture and then agriculture, the land is still the property of the clan, the gens, and can only be inherited through the clan. It can't be inherited outside. It doesn't become individual private property. Now, on the question of matrilineality, again, they try and portray it as, well, there are matrilineal and there are patriarchal and they are bilateral, and there's no real structure to it. Well, the thing is, you see, I've looked and I've found texts, and the more I read, the further back you go, the more matrilineal societies you meet. Now, in the early days, you see, there was no strict pairing, i.e., Mr. and Mrs. You know, I, as a young boy, I remember in England in the 60s, literally you had women who were called Mrs. John Smith. And I used to think, hasn't she got even her first name of her, at least Mrs. Smith? No, Mrs. John. The complete property of the man is what that reflects, historically speaking. But in early societies, there was a degree of promiscuity. Now, I don't want to open up the whole discussion on promiscuity. I've got a whole load of reading on that, which would be very funny and interesting reading, but I'm not going to do it here. But human beings are not strictly monogamous animals, right? And there was a time when a young woman was expected to be a virgin, marry her man, and stay with him for the rest of her life and know nobody else. Now, I'm not going to go around one by one and ask every one of you whether you are monogamous or not. I would bet you're not. I wasn't, and a lot of other people weren't either, in the sense that nobody today finds the love of their life and stays with them for the rest of their lives and knows nobody else. There's a much greater freedom. In effect, we could say that in the last 100 years, we've been evolving back towards a much more natural way of being for human beings. That doesn't mean that there aren't pairing couples and that there aren't people who fall in love and stay together, etc. But strict monogamy is not human nature. And God, okay. Yeah, okay. A little bit louder. Okay, sorry. In the very early days, and the societies that have been observed early enough confirm that. They confirm that aspect. Now, I could jump forward to, I will do that actually, to an individual called Paul Lejeune. Don't know if any of you know him. He was a French Jesuit priest who came to New France, the French colonies, to Christianize the indigenous people. Now on this, the reason I'm raising this is that when they try to deny matrilineality, they say, oh,
I just want to do a quick pause because we've been going for about an hour and a half now. I want to remind everyone, please make sure you mount the like button on whatever platform you're watching on. I'm looking at you, YouTube. There is a shocking disparity between the number of people watching on YouTube right now and the number of people who have mounted that like button. Let's get those numbers up. Rumble, I'm looking at you as well. I also want to welcome, we've got over 300 people watching on Twitter right now, or X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, which is pretty great. I appreciate everyone. Please make sure you subscribe and follow on whatever platform you're watching on. We do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where I will show you things no one else on the internet is showing you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me to learn about socialism. Again, let's go keep mounting, guys. Keep mounting the like button. If you don't want to mount the like button, you can high five the like button. You can shake hands with the like button. You can give the like button a kiss on the cheek, whatever you want. But just do something to the like button, okay? The like button is feeling lonely.
We've studied indigenous peoples, and there's patriarchy in some of them, right? The question is, when did they study them? Because if you study the indigenous peoples of America in the 1800s, they had been in contact with European culture for 200 years by then, influenced by contact with Europeans. And I found interesting the reading of one text, which you might want to look up yourselves. It's called The Myths of Male Dominance by Eleanor Burke Leacock. She's an American anthropologist. It's interesting. Americans have produced some really interesting anthropologists of a progressive nature. She went and did field work amongst what was called the Montagnais Naskapé. I think they're called the Innu now, of northeastern Canada. But in the 50s, obviously, you cannot hope to find the historical relations of these peoples. And it's not enough simply to say, oh, I did field work, I observed them, this is how they are. That's where Paul Lejeune comes in. Because he is a man of the 1600s. And he made a huge effort to Christianize these people. And he spent the winter of 1633-34 with them to befriend them in the process of Christianizing them. Now, he found some problems. He started out with a typical European patriarchal approach. All I have to do is convince the men, job done. And he realized, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not enough to convince the men, because the men don't control the women. The men don't dominate the women. They're egalitarian. And he said, he spent a lot of time trying to do this, and lots of European colonists have done this. They go to these peoples thinking they're going to find a society where men dominate. He sat down with one of these chiefs and he tried to explain to this chief the niceties of French civilization. And he was standing there with his son, and he said to him, this son of yours, for example, you say he's your son. How do you know he's your son? You let your women have sex with other men. He might not be your son. You know what the answer of the chief was? It's a famous quote. He said, you know what the problem with you French? You love only your children. We love all the children of the tribe. We bring up all the children together. Basically, it does not matter to us. Now, here's a quote from Lejeune. He says this, the Montagnais, the Innu, they prefer to take the children of their sisters as heirs rather than their own, or than those of their brothers, calling in question the fidelity of their wives and being unable to doubt that these nephews came from their blood. Now, what he's describing is a matrilineal society. Why the children of their sisters? Well, you see, a man can be absolutely sure that his sister's children are his nephews and nieces. Why? Because his sister is definitely his sister, because she was born of the same mother. But he says they don't trust, for instance, their brothers' wives. Now, in the logic of a French Jesuit, he thinks it's because they don't trust them to be their fidelity. What he doesn't understand is that in actual fact, there was a sexual freedom in these peoples, and they were matrilineal. Now, the point Leacock is making here is, this is a description, actually by quite a reactionary, actually bastard if you think what he did. I'll describe what he did afterwards, but he's describing these people before contact with Europeans and the kind of family relations, which confirms what Morgan said about the matrilineal nature of these peoples. Now, he tried to convince the young ones that he was trying to Christianize, that you must stay with the same person for the rest of your life. Again, I quote Lejeune, "The young people do not think that they can persevere in the state of matrimony with a bad wife or a bad husband. They wish to be free and to be able to divorce the consort if they do not love each other." Now think about it. Who is civilizing who? The French Jesuit actually spent time trying to get them to understand the need to beat their wives. He would say, look, no French man is told what to do by their women, and you should be the same. And he realizes that it's not enough to convince the men, got to convince the women. But then he realizes those that have been brought up in this culture, it's very difficult.
Do you guys notice the chat on YouTube is much quieter and much less filled with bullshit since I put the communist in a 5-minute timeout? Like the communist in here, talking to everyone, distracting people, trying to gaslight people into believing things. No, I put the commie in a timeout because the commie was talking about things that were not relevant to the presentation. And then all of a sudden, everything got so much nicer. I didn't ban the communist, but the communist is going to take a little bit of a break.
And he's thinking, if I baptize these young people, they may not behave like Christians. They may revert to their bad habits of not wanting to be with somebody they don't love, terrible thing. So he draws the conclusion, you read it, we need to take their children. And we need to take them away from them. Because he actually says it in one of his texts. If we have the schools for these children in the neighborhood of the tribe or this group of people, these indigenous people, if they see the way we treat the children, they will come and take them away. Because they didn't beat their children. They didn't beat their wives and they didn't beat their children. He describes one scene where one young woman, they can't convince her of the advantages of French civilization and culture and behavior, that she has to accept fidelity to the man, etc., etc. Because they can't convince her, they decide they're going to take her away to a dungeon. That'll teach her a bit of time in a dungeon. By then, he Christianized some of the indigenous people. And the first thing Christianized were the most...
Human centipede. I wasn't actually on board with this. But like when you first chatted this in, I was like, yo, is this guy saying the nuclear family and capitalism caused domestic violence? And I was about to say, of course not. That's not what they're saying. But then he's like, they couldn't convince the young woman to assimilate to the nuclear family in French society, so they took her to a dungeon? I'm sorry, what? It's like, what is that famous French bondage porn? The story of it's like the story of O. That's what it's called, right? The story of O. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. The story of O. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yup, the story of O. Famous French bondage porn. I definitely haven't read it. Definitely. Vince knows. Vince, I feel like you've revealed something to all of us by revealing that you know that story. It's a French BDSM porn. It really is. I'm not joking. It's a famous French BDSM porn. It's graphic, yo. I obviously haven't read it. I listened to it on audiobook, but you saw there's a film? How did they make a film for that? There's a film and a graphic novel of the story. Okay, you learn something new every day. It's called The Story of O.
Zealots of, devout Christians, fanatical Christians, they were physically manhandling, taking away this girl, and the others who had not been Christianized tried to intervene. The others threatened them, actually, we will do anything for God, I will kill you. So they backed off, but they were disgusted at the scene. This is the civilizing effect of European culture on these people.
Oh yeah, there's more than that.
But you see,
there's a lot more than that.
It wasn't just a product of a priest sitting down and trying to convince. What Leacock explains, and I think is quite a convincing argument, is that contact with the Europeans changed the nature of the society in North America amongst the indigenous peoples. For example, these people that she studied, who, as we can see, in the 1600s were still matrilineal and egalitarian, and a degree of promiscuity amongst them. When the whites arrive, French and English, they start trading furs. The men of the Naskape, the Innu, start hunting beavers, not for food that they need. They didn't go extinct when they were hunting for what they needed. Now they started hunting on a large scale. They describe how one man and maybe his son would have 300 traps in a line in the forest, and they would spend the whole hunting season manning the traps, catching the beavers, killing them, skinning them. And then at the end of the season, they would come down to the river or the lake, wherever, with them, and waiting for the English or the French ships to arrive to trade the furs. In exchange, they would get food, they would get clothing, they would get tools. The way they lived had changed. And this had a huge impact on the family, because now, instead of the egalitarian nature of society, the men were starting to become the earners. Some of the men sometimes would get occasional wage labor.
This is when the patriarchy started.
So
he's talking right now about when the patriarchy started. Everyone stop talking about BDSM in the chat and pay attention. This is the start of the patriarchy. Is one of the things that drives people to socialism the abolition of historical atrocities by blaming it on. Well, they blame every problem in the world on capitalism. They say none of these problems would exist if capitalism didn't exist. Capitalism is to blame for the brutality of human history. If it weren't for capitalism, we wouldn't have crime. That's exactly right, Tayton. Yeah, Jerry. Yeah. In a manner, the patriarchy started during the. I'm not even going to go into the. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say the rest of the. I'm not going to say that word. I'm not, because it can be construed in different ways. Okay, with the patriarch, you know what I'm talking about, Jerry. What? Literally, okay, literally.
Way they procured their means of existence, as Morgan pointed out, changed from a collective egalitarian hunter-gatherer society to trading with, basically they'd become part of capitalism. They were hunting a product, a good which could be exchanged, and it radically changed the family relations. Then you get anthropologists of the 18th, 19th century, 20th century, and they said, oh, we've studied them. They're patrilineal, they're patriarchal, ignoring that there was an evolution already that had taken place under the impact of contact with capitalism. Now, that's one important point which I found in the reading, which I find is a materialist explanation for the change in the family. But let's go back to the history of society and the family. Homo sapiens has been around for about 300,000 years. That's the latest discoveries. And agriculture came into being about 12,000 years ago, 10, 12,000 years ago. It depends on different parts of the world. In the Middle East in particular is where this first emerged. Now, this is the Neolithic revolution. From that known moment in history to the emergence of the first historically known societies, we have the historically
Capitalism
recorded
created the
societies,
cell phone.
civilizations, the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Sumer, etc., they're all patriarchal by the time they emerge. But they are also all class societies. You have slavery.
Correct.
You have private property. You have a privileged elite.
Because this is correct, and this is something socialists are going to try to lie to you about. I've heard them say this. Socialists are like, there would still be commerce under socialism. No, there wouldn't. No, there wouldn't. No, because any form of bartering would require private property ownership. You can't have bartering if there's no private property, right? So don't listen to anyone who tells you there'd still be commerce under socialism. There would not be commerce under socialism because you're not allowed to own anything. Jerry got Carlin speechless. Well, I wasn't speechless, Nick. I just wasn't going to say the beaver trade. Jesus Christ. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
A mass of people working. The passage had taken place sometime in that period. Not automatically. Agriculture doesn't immediately produce that. But agriculture and the development of technique, the development of tools, plowing, etc., eventually leads to a surplus accumulated in the hands of a few who want to pass on their property. Now, if you look at ancient Greece, as known in history, it's an extremely patriarchal society. The ancient Greeks, great philosophers and great thinkers, how did they treat their women? Ancient Greece, the women could not be seen outside the house. They could not go out freely. If a man came from outside, the woman had to be secluded at the back of the house. You see, you recognize something here, don't you? You would, from where you come.
You are on my fucking private property. You are in my house right now. I get to decide who does what in my house. You don't fucking control everything. If I don't want you to speak in my house, you will not speak in my house. If you are going to be disruptive in my chat, then I will prevent you from speaking in my house because you are in my house. I'm not in your house. I'm not following your rules right now. If you want to be here, you're going to follow my fucking rules. Do you understand, communist?
Come from in certain parts of Pakistan or Afghanistan, that is still the case today. The veil, just en passant, was not invented by Islam. It goes back millennia in the Middle East.
What? Do we have a Lindsay update? Hang on, let me get in on my sock account. I'm going to see this. Did James Lindsay just say whiteness is capitalism? Have we successfully peer pressured him? Let's see. What did James Lindsay say? What did he say? What did he say? Oh, he's arguing about Christian nationalism. Oh, it's in a video on YouTube? Oh, I was looking at his Twitter. Nope, he still has said nothing of interest on Twitter. Nothing. Oh, holy shit. Look at this. Look at fucking what James Lindsay fucking tweeted. Look at this shit. Look at this. Start having the courage to use the C word. Communism. Start having the clarity to use the M word. Marxism. Stop pussyfooting around. James, you have literally blocked dozens of people from my community who have been using the words communism and Marxism for the better part of 3 fucking years, James. If it is so important to you that people start using the terms communism and Marxism, then why are you blocking and shit-talking the people who are actually doing it, you conservative moms for liberty, grifter fucking shill? Why are you literally blocking and ignoring? And quite frankly, James, you were ignoring us way before you started blocking us, which is why we got fucking pissed off in the first place. You have been ignoring us, talking about this stuff for years, James, and I know because I made sure you had all this shit in your DMs and you knew about it and you saw it and you ignored it anyway. You were ignoring us for a fucking year before you started blocking us. So don't fucking pretend that you care about people using the words communism and Marxism. All you care about is people sucking your fucking cock and pushing the Gnostic sex cult conspiracy theory, James. That's all you care about. And if you think we're going to stop haranguing your ass until you start saying capitalism every fucking day, bro, you got another thing coming. We are going to be on your ass about this until you fucking bend the knee to us. And if you don't bend the knee to us, we are going to make you look like the conservative grifter fucking shill that you are. That's all. That's all. That's all.
To a period where extreme control of women's sexuality was imposed. Why? Because they had to impose monogamy, strict monogamy, but as Marx and Engels both say, for the women only. By the way, a parallel development to this is the first time that you have prostitution. You know, they say the prostitute, the oldest trade. It's not, it's bollocks. Hunter-gathering is the oldest trade in the world. Not prostitution. Prostitution is a relatively recent phenomenon in the last 10,000 years or so. It comes into being with class society because you see, once you have property, and once you have the men controlling the property, and the desire to pass your property onto your offspring, how do you guarantee that your offspring are your offspring? My dad used to joke whenever a friend would come round, "Oh, nice little boy you got there, your son." He said, "Well, yeah, he's his mother's son." He was joking. I was his son too. I actually looked like him, so I think I was. But he was joking with the idea was, you never know, right? That was the joke. But in that joke, there is a truth. And how can you make sure? You have to control very strictly the sexuality of the women. And ancient Greece showed that. Now, that came from somewhere. It wasn't always like that. There's another source we can take a look at, which is the evolution.
Wait. Have we just uncovered the source of the James Lindsay Gnostic sex cult conspiracy theory? Because this guy is arguing that capitalism via the nuclear family tries to control the sexuality of the women, and therefore the opposite of controlling the sexuality of the women could be, in some cases, the Gnostic sex cult. Is that where this fucking comes from? Are you shitting me? The Gnostic. So is James Lindsay literally arguing that a Gnostic sex cult is the opposite of controlling the sexuality of women under capitalism? And conservatives are buying this shit? Oh my God. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive.
Of the ancient religions. I have here an article on Sumer. It's called State Formation in Sumer and the Subjugation of Women. And very interesting article, which points out and actually outlines the evolution of the religion of Sumer, which shows that there were powerful goddesses in the early days, that women had a much more equal relationship, had a greater role in society, but gradually the religion changes from goddesses, sometimes very powerful goddesses. It goes through stages. The gods start to appear, and then eventually the goddesses are demoted, and you have an all-powerful male god. There's a book by Diva called Did God Have a Wife? Very interesting. He's an archaeologist that has gone to Israel, Palestine, and has
God doesn't need a wife.
Found all the archological
God is a
evidence
perfect balance of masculine and feminine, bro.
That Yahweh had a wife.
No.
She was called the Queen of the Heavens. There was a period in which
goddamn right
this was a powerful figure in the religion. The symbol of this goddess was the tree. Now, why would it be the tree? Well, think about it. In a society...
Why is James Lindsay demanding that people say communism and Marxism, but he blocks people for telling him to say capitalism? Does this seem like a contradiction to anyone else? Because the pretty clear goal of communism and Marxism, which are basically the same thing, is to abolish capitalism. And yet James Lindsay, to this day, not only refuses to say the word capitalism, he also refuses to define the term capitalism as private property ownership. He also blocks anyone on Twitter who points out that the number one goal of the woke left is to abolish capitalism. So if James is demanding that people say communism and Marxism, why the fuck isn't he saying capitalism? Yasmin, I don't care if he said it once or twice. This is what people always say. They're like, James has said the word capitalism. I'm like, when? They're like, he said it one time in a speech. I'm like, why the fuck isn't James saying capitalism every day? I have to say capitalism at least 27 times a fucking day. James says capitalism in one speech one time, and that's considered acceptable? When he pushes the Western values bullshit, Western values, which just means white people. I don't give a fuck if James said capitalism one time in one speech. James should be out there saying fucking capitalism 8,000 times a day if he has to. That is the responsibility that he took on when he accepted the burden of the status in which he has built himself to. With great power comes great responsibility. If James is not going to respect the responsibility that he has brought upon himself, then he should damn well be called out by people who will accept it, which is us, who are the only people on the internet who have been saying capitalism for literally years. Because we say because, well, I mean, that's exactly right. James is probably saying the Democrats are communists. That's exactly right, which also isn't true. I think everyone should tweet right now at James Lindsay, say capitalism, James. If you're blocked by him, do it anyway. Say fucking capitalism. I am so sick of this shit. If James Lindsay is unwilling to say the word capitalism, then no one should believe he's above board when he demands that people say Marxism and communism. Everyone should go simultaneously tweet at him right now. Say capitalism, James.
Well, you don't really know exactly how we reproduce, the actual science behind it. Women are these fantastic beings that produce fruit. They regularly produce new life. Like trees produce fruit that can be picked, women produce the next generation. And they were actually revered because of this in ancient societies. And that was part of the egalitarianism of the hunter-gatherer societies. But you see, you know, when God says we shall create them in our image, again, ask yourself, why does he say our? I don't know, was God a transgender individual? They didn't like to be called, be regarded as a single individual. The truth is because that text probably belongs to a period when he had a wife, and it was evident. He didn't create us in his image. We created him in our image. We know that. All the religions reflect the structure of society at a given moment. And as the structure of society changes from an egalitarian, matrilineal society to a patriarchal one, the goddesses are demoted and a more powerful male god appears. First as the father of all the gods, like Zeus, like Odin, in all of these societies. But eventually, we end up with the one God, with no wife, no women whatsoever in the religion. And it's an all-powerful, and if you look at the Old Testament, he's an all-powerful, very angry, very powerful, very violent God, very jealous God. And there's a lot of the evidence in the archaeology for this, because they found these statues of the figure of Ashura is a woman with two lions by her hands on the lion, and in the same clay image, there's the tree, which is the symbol of Ashura. She disappears. But it's the same with ancient Greek religion, ancient Roman religion. In all of them, if you go back far enough, you find a previous stage where the female gods, the goddesses, were more important. What leads to the demotion of woman in heaven is the demotion of woman on earth, in our society. And we change the religion in the skies, let's say, in line with the society we live in. When men become dominant, the religion has to be one where the male figure is dominant, the women are subservient and obedient, and women must know their place. And monogamy is imposed, but as I said, only for the women. If any of you have read the Old Testament and you see Abraham, how many wives did Abraham have? How many women did he have? You know, aren't we supposed to be husband and wife for life because the Bible teaches us? You read the Old Testament and you will find...
All right, I need to run into the little socialist room real quick. It's been a long day. I'm going to keep this playing. Take good notes. Let me know if I miss anything. I'll be right back.
Find Jacob and all they have more than one wife. A little detail that when I went to a Catholic school and I was educated, the teacher never pointed that little detail out because it would contradict the idea that it's the natural way and always has been. No, they were not. They had more. Abraham, actually, the first son, is not even with his wife. It's with the concubine because the maid, because his wife couldn't give him one. Then God is magnanimous, and at the age of 90, he lets her have a baby. That's the story in the Bible, anyway. But the religions change in reflecting the change in the structure of society. So what I'm trying to say is that you can go back to somebody like Lejeune to see what the indigenous people were like before contact. But you can go even much further back in history and study the original sources of religion, and you see these changes which all indicate a transition from matrilineal to patrilineal. It's reflected in the religion. Now, Morgan was an evolutionist, and the anthropologists of the 19th century were mainly evolutionists. Unfortunately, they were also, not referring to Morgan, he was one of the few who did field work, but some of them had an idea that, yes, there is evolution, but they used it in a reactionary way. The white-skinned North European is the highest product of human evolution. That was the idea they had. You had theories like monogenesis, polygenesis, i.e. God created us all equal, yes, but some of us degenerated. Some of us degenerated and became black and primitive and savages, and others remained the superior being that God had created. Others thought, no, he created us more primitive, but some of us evolved and became superior. The end story is always the same. the whites were somehow superior, and there was scientific basis for that. That was the thinking. Now, that's extremely reactionary, but also very useful to the imperialists of the time, because when you go and treat, especially the way they treated the black African people, enslaving them in horrendous conditions, you've got to somehow justify that. And how do you do it? You declare them to be subhuman. The president of the American Anthropological Society in 1901 actually says that they're subhuman. And it's to justify the horrendous oppression of these people. And then you have degrees of inferiority. The superior ones were the
it's on the list, Yasmin. Don't worry about it.
British,
I'm going to create the
Germans,
drama for you. Don't worry.
Scandinavians, North Europe, Southern Europe, Italians and Spanish. They were already not really white. The East Europeans, strangely enough, very white, but not at the level of the North Europeans. It was all a nice story, which was backed up by so-called science, which dominated society. In comes, I'm going to try and do this telegraphically, an individual called Franz Boas, who was a German of Jewish background, who came to America and became a professor of anthropology, I think, at Columbia University. Originally, he accepted these ideas, but he was given the task, for instance, of measuring people's craniums to establish if there was there must be a scientific basis to why black people are inferior to white people. So measure their craniums, which he did. He measured thousands of them. And he came to the conclusion that this is bunkum, because the size of a black person's brain can be bigger or smaller in the same way that of a white person can be bigger or smaller. Now, he said, if I had to classify them, I'd have to put a bunch of white.
I just have to say, I'm really, really pleased with the amount of say capitalism I'm seeing on Twitter right now in James's replies. Thank you guys all for your service. I'm sorry, but after this, I don't want to hear anything from who DM'd you the other day about how these people. Well, I mean, that's another thing. Like, for people who missed me talking about this the other day, James Lindsay's friends have literally been convinced by James, who doesn't know who these people are, that these people are just not dangerous and not people that we need to worry about. And I did a whole rant about this the other day. You can go back and watch it if you want. But like, James Lindsay is literally convincing his friends that these people are not people that we should be paying attention to. And by his friends, I mean conservative influencers that you would all know the name of, that thought these people were dangerous before someone gave them a talking to. So yeah. These people want to abolish the nuclear family. These people are very clear that they want to abolish the nuclear family. The desire to abolish the nuclear family is behind every single attack on parental rights in the United States today. These people are flat out telling you they want to abolish the nuclear family. This is not unclear. And James is running around saying these people aren't dangerous, and James Lindsay's friends are running around saying that these people aren't dangerous. Well, James is also pretending that he has explained to people where the attack on parental rights are coming from when he hasn't. James Lindsay is either full of shit or he's controlled opposition. One of those is true. And neither, by the way, makes me happy, because I really believed in him for a long time. I dedicated a whole chapter in my book to him, and I meant every word of it, and I don't take it back, because I still do believe that when I wrote it, it was 100% true, but something has happened in the intervening years, and he is off the goddamn reservation. And if he's saying, if he is demanding on today on Twitter that people say communism and Marxism, and then he's also saying that these people are not dangerous. These are literal communists arguing to abolish the nuclear family because they believe that the nuclear family upholds capitalism. James also refuses to say the word capitalism. All of these things are contradictory just on a very base level. They don't go together. So it is unclear to me who James Lindsay's allegiances are to, but it is certainly not to the truth. And it is certainly not hinged into reality of what the left wants to do and what the left believes. And you guys are seeing that right in front of you right now. I'm not editing this. This isn't something that I created. This is what they believe.
White people and black people and indigenous people in this category and a bunch of in this other category, because it just doesn't make sense. There's no scientific basis to it. And to his credit, he combated the racism. And he had to fight against the stream, in actual fact, because the dominant views in American science of the time was that all this other stuff was scientifically based. He combated it. Now, I'm going to have to be very telegraphic. The unfortunate thing is this. He started out by saying, we must do a lot more concrete field work before we can develop laws of development and analysis, etc. Which he did. He proceeded to accumulate, him and his all his students who became quite famous anthropologists like Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, Lowy, a lot of the Boasians, basically. But he drew the conclusion by looking at the different, such a variety of different societies. He actually says, I'll quote it, it's from his Anthropology in Modern Life. He says, where is it? I'm trying to find it. Laws of development, except in most generalized forms, cannot be established, and a detailed course of growth cannot be predicted. And basically, all we can do, he says, is study the phenomena in front of us, i.e., look at each individual case, but you can't generalize. Now, what happened was in the 20th century, there was a reaction against Morgan and Engels and the materialist and evolutionist approach to this question. But it fits the needs of the capitalist class, because the capitalist class cannot accept an idea which says,
I can only withstand a certain amount of bullshit before I lose it. And yeah. Yep. Guys, the WEF has nothing to do with this. These people are not the WEF. And listen, I'm not saying the WEF is not a cause for concern, but they're two different groups. You have the radical revolutionary socialists over here. You have the WEF over here. Two different groups, okay?
the families evolved through different phases. And the great thing about Morgan, he actually says, he calls it the monogamian. The monogamous family has served us well so far, but if society should continue to evolve, it could further change. So he leaves it open to a further change in society. Engels takes that much further, and he actually says, the future generations will decide how they should relate to each other. It's not our task to dictate to the future generations how they're going to, what kind of sexual relations they're going to have. Now, these ideas were a threat to bourgeois society. Now, in particular, after 1917, the Bolsheviks come to power, and they try to act on the ideas.
I just want to point out, this guy is wearing a 1917 hoodie. That's the Russian Revolution. The people that we're watching are Bolsheviks, they're Leninists, they're Trotskyists. They believe that the Russian Revolution was like the greatest event in the history of man. That's who these people are that James Lindsay will tell you are not dangerous. I want to welcome the 500 people who are watching me on Twitter right now, or X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Sorry, I've been on Twitter a long time. I'm never calling it not Twitter. But welcome, guys. I'm glad you're watching on Twitter. I'm glad live streaming on Twitter is actually getting an audience, much more than my shadow banned YouTube audience. I appreciate all of you. Please make sure you're following me. Please make sure you are subscribed on the channel. If you are watching on YouTube or Rumble, we do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. We got about 10 minutes left of this presentation. Let's wrap this up.
Of Engels, which he had elaborated, basing themselves on the analysis of Morgan. Yeah. What did the Bolsheviks do? Well, remember what they did. They introduced abortion for all women, available for all women. They decriminalized homosexuality. They made divorce a very simple procedure. They abolished the concept of illegitimate children. A swathe of very radical advanced reforms, because they were basing themselves on Engels. Now, unfortunately, and I can't go into it here, obviously the Soviet Union, because it was so backward, economically speaking, 85% of the population were peasants, most of them illiterate, and because of the isolation of the revolution in one country, in a backward country, they didn't have the material resources to act fully on those reforms and to maintain them fully. In fact, in the 30s, they abolish abortion, they make divorce more difficult, and they recriminalize homosexuality. This is the reaction of the bureaucracy. But for a period, the Bolsheviks gave the world a view of what genuine communists could achieve in terms of family relations. That became something they had to combat. They had to combat it. I've got it here. Marvin Harris, another American anthropologist, in a text called The Rise of Anthropological Theory, published in 1968. So it's worth reading. He explains the modern anthropology entered the 20th century with the mandate to, quote, to expose Morgan's scheme and destroy the method on which it was based, i.e. the method of social evolution based on the evolution of technique, basically of the means of production. Ever since then, in reality, in anthropology, we've had a battle against a materialist, evolutionist approach to the family.
Tayton win with the $20 super chat. Thank you, Tayton. This is for Victor. Buy him some good beer for allowing us to take a lot of your time together. I appreciate that. It's been a long weekend, but cheers to you, Tayton. Thank you for the support. As always, I appreciate you.
Reaction, your ideas dominate. There were anthropologists like Leslie White, which I quoted before. I've really got to quote this one. He says, this shows you how, the postmodernists, it's all about ideas. It's all about words. You change the word and you change the essence. Not necessarily so. And he says, because, you can have what's called an abstraction. And they say, he quotes them, he says, how can science have a subject matter which cannot be perceived? There is no science that has an invisible, imperceptible, intangible subject matter. There is not and cannot be one. Then because the abstractionists, he says, have jockeyed themselves into the position that culture is imperceptible. You can't see culture, you can't touch it. So does it exist? Does it exist? I can't actually draw on this a map of culture. I can't draw you a picture of culture. I can't describe what color it is or how big it is, but it exists. Who can deny it? But he says, because of that, they say, the next logical question to be raised is, and he quotes, is culture real? Indeed. Does it exist? And then he quotes, this is a question that Ralph Linton asked. And then he quotes Radcliffe Brown. He says, culture is a word that designates no concrete reality, but only an abstraction, and a very vague abstraction at that. And then he goes on to say, quote, Spiro, another anthropologist, who says that culture has no ontological reality. And Leslie White says, by this, he evidently means that culture is not real. Thus, they have defined culture out of existence, thinking something out of existence. Lewis White says, if one can get oneself into a situation like this by thinking, maybe one can get oneself out of it by thinking, though by a different kind of thinking. And I would say it would be an evolutionist, materialist, dialectical materialist way of thinking. You can solve this problem. Now, as I said earlier on, hunter-gatherer societies have been shown to be extremely egalitarian. The passage to farming eventually produces the surplus that produces the early
Farming
forms of class
produced
society.
capitalism.
When you have
Farming
property
created
in
capitalism.
goods, you can have property also in human beings.
Oh!
Slavery appears. Women.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what was that? When you have property of goods you can also have property of human beings. What he just said is the basis of why whiteness means capitalism. It's the basis of the patriarchy. It's the basis of the attacks on parental rights. It is the basis of everything. Everything. The idea of human beings as private property. Because private property is what socialists want to abolish, and private property is what they define capitalism as. Let's watch again.
Farming eventually produces the surplus that produces the early forms of class society.
Capitalism.
When you have property in goods, you can have property also in human beings.
Ding.
Slavery appears.
Ding.
Women become property,
Ding.
which they weren't before.
Patriarchy.
In the ancient Romans, the pater familias, the head of the family, he was literally the owner of everything in the family. Wife, children, slaves, animals. And he had all power over them. If you read the Old Testament, what do you do to an adulterous wife? You stone her to death. You have to introduce extreme forms of punishment to force women to accept the monogamy imposed on them. Now,
monogamy imposed
the 20th century anthropology tries to remove a historical...
The monogamy imposed on women by capitalism via the nuclear family. Thus, exactly, H. Tom, this is beautiful. Thus, what they are saying is that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, equals slavery. That is what they are saying. Whiteness means capitalism because they believe capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created slavery in which people were owned as private property. Capitalism created the gender binary, which is also called the patriarchy, in which women are owned as men as private property. Capitalism created the nuclear family via the gender binary, in which children are owned as private property. That's what parental rights are. They want to abolish all of those forms of private property because they believe that all of those forms of private property are the same thing as slavery. Does everyone understand this point? If you do not understand this, please tell me. I will walk through it again. Even if there's only one person who doesn't understand this, if you don't understand this and you think you're going to be embarrassed, don't be embarrassed. Just say, Carlin, I don't understand, and we will walk you through it. Because this is so important, guys. Socialists believe that capitalism is defined as private property ownership. The reason that whiteness means capitalism is that whiteness is slavery owning people as private property. That slavery created systemic racism, which can only be abolished by abolishing capitalism, because the system that upholds systemic racism is capitalism. They believe capitalism created the patriarchy by putting men in the workplace, women in the home. Men own women as slaves. They believe that parental rights need to be abolished because it is owning children as private property. Does anyone not understand this? We aren't free until everyone is free. And by everyone is free, what they mean is abolishing capitalism. They really do believe that we will not be free. No one will be free until private property ownership is abolished. Does everyone understand this? I'm looking over on Rumble. I'm looking, I can see the Twitter chat. We have over 530 people watching on Twitter right now. Appreciate all of you. Let's keep going.
View, an evolutionist materialist view of this, and deny that that this is valid. Now, I've got other things here I'd like to list, but I can't. But just to conclude on one thing, we as Marxists would argue that what I've just listed here is a very brief explanation. You can read the article and maybe even read some of the books which I've quoted. It's worth doing. There has been an evolution. Class society is where women were demoted from the egalitarian position into property of the men. And that took place thousands of years ago. But what has happened in the last 80 to 100 years? At the beginning, I asked you, is it your aim to find the man of your life? Or should it be my aim to find the man or the woman of my life or whatever? No, that doesn't mean that people don't pair, that people don't fall in love, we're not arguing that. But it has changed. Think about this. In the United States of America, 50% of marriages end in divorce. That's very different to what it would have been 100 years ago. 40% of babies in the United States are born to women who are not married. That's one hell of a change that's taken place. And in the last 70 or 80 years, the family has changed more than in the previous 10,000 years. That's a fact. And it's a fact we can touch with our hands. What is the material basis for this? Women have come into the labor market more and more and more. Capitalism has actually created that. Capitalism in the last 50 years has created a family where the husband and wife must go to work, both of them, if they're to pay the rent, the mortgage, and keep the family. It's a material question. They've also, I've got the facts and figures, they've actually reduced the real wages of individuals. There was a time when a man's wages did include the wife's needs, because they could feed, clothes, and give money to the wife, etc. No longer can a man do that, because the real wages relative to the overall economy has been reduced. Now, to maintain the same standard of living as 50 years ago, you need two wages coming into the house. But this has a very progressive side to it. Women are not longer tied to the hearth, to the kitchen, etc. They are in the labor movement. They're in the workplace. Young women go to college. They get degrees. They get jobs. And with that comes a wage. And with that comes a degree of independence. Now, I'm not saying that we live in an idyllic world. We all know that it's not perfect. And there's still lots of inequalities. There's still a gender inequality in wages. Nonetheless,
not really,
it's capitalism
bro.
which has actually created the material conditions for the final true emancipation of women, but which can only come about through the abolition of the capitalist system.
What? The final emancipation of women can only come about through the true abolition of the capitalist system. Do you guys get it? By abolishing capitalism, these people believe that they will fix all problems in society. By instituting equity, these people believe that they will fix all problems. You can only have gender equity when you abolish capitalism. Capitalism defined as private property ownership, and gender equity cannot exist in the same place at the same time. They don't work together. That is what these people believe. Tayton says, as a royal follower, I'm curious about what you say in capitalists creating men in power. It was always this way. I actually hate this ideology so much. Well, we can talk about the royals another day, Tayton, but I hate this I hate this ideology as well. Let's just listen to that part again, just for because first he says capitalism created the material conditions under which women can emancipate themselves, and then he said the only way women can emancipate themselves is if capitalism is abolished. Well, our communist friend is getting put in a timeout again, and I don't really care what he thinks about that, because I have two rules in my chat, communist. Number one, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. Two, no whining. You've been whining for a while now, communist. It's really unbecoming. Men who whine are like the most unattractive men in the world, bro. You're never going to get girls or boys, whichever you want. I don't judge. But you're never going to get people to fuck you by being such a fucking whiner. Take your fucking time out, learn from it, and don't come back and do it again.
They get jobs. And with that comes a wage. And with that comes a degree of independence. Now, I'm not saying that we live in an idyllic world. We all know that it's not perfect. And there's still lots of inequalities.
True.
There's still a gender inequality in wages. Nonetheless, it's capitalism which has actually created the material conditions for the final true emancipation of women, but which can only come about through the abolition of the capitalist system itself. I think I've said enough and I've gone on long enough. I haven't said everything I want to say, even in these short notes, which are an abbreviation of a shortened version of what I've read. But I hope I've given you a taste of what Marxists think about this and what we have to say. And I do believe we have a lot to say. It's not true what they say about Morgan and Engels superseded and the materialist, historical materialist approach, evolutionist approach is superseded and all the rest of it. I think we have a lot to say, and we have to say it loudly, because from all this, what's the conclusion, the final conclusion? Men are not naturally aggressive towards women. It just isn't true. There are violent men. Of course there are. There's femicide, and it's a terrible problem. But it's a product of the distortions of human society by class relations and by property. You remove the private property, you build a genuine socialist society where you don't have private property in the sense of private property, the means of production, or, for instance, a society where if a man and woman with children have to separate, they don't have to fight each other with lawyers over who gets the house and the money. But there's plenty of social housing.
Oh. What? What? Because I swear the socialist that I just timed out in the chat has been trying to tell us that we would still own our homes under socialism, except that the person that he has been calling his hero for the last couple hours just literally said that you won't have to fear getting a divorce any longer because there'll be plenty of socialized housing for everyone. Let's go back. We're going to listen to that beauty again. Again, capitalism is defined as private property ownership. Private property means your home, your land, your business, your rental properties, your intellectual property, your parental rights, and your individual liberties. These people who are radical, revolutionary, socialist, communist, whatever, they want to abolish capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership. Now let's listen to them say that clearly and unequivocally.
Men are not naturally aggressive towards women. It just isn't true. There are violent men. Of course there are. There's femicide, and it's a terrible problem. But it's a product of the distortions of human society by class relations and by property. You remove the private property, you build a genuine socialist society where you don't have private property in the sense of private property, the means of production. Or, for instance, a society where if a man and woman with children have to separate, they don't have to fight each other with lawyers over who gets the house and the money. But there's plenty of social housing where the husband or the wife or whoever can move out, and there can be a much more peaceful breakup. I've had some experience.
How on earth would there be so much socialized housing if your home was not included in the definition of private property ownership? They want everyone to live in the projects, guys. That's what we're talking about when they say socialized housing. They want everyone to live in the projects. Do you want to live in the projects? I don't want to live in the projects. No offense to people who do live in the projects. They're just trying to get by. I get that. But I don't want everyone to live in the projects. I don't want you to live in the projects. I don't think that's a good idea. They want you to be reliant on the state for everything. And they say it clearly and unequivocally, and all you have to do is listen to them.
Be married more than once. And I know what it means when you have to decide what happens with the children. The way it's structured, we have a breed of individuals called lawyers who make couples fight each other to the death over the money, the alimony, the house. Because who makes from that? It's the lawyer. The lawyer always wins. Every letter he writes, that's $30, $50, $100. And I had it. I actually told my lawyer, I don't need you anymore. I proceeded by myself because I had a deal with one of my ex-wives. We had a deal. I thought, why bother with lawyers? But this society is structured in such a way as to force people to fight each other. Enough social housing, the children are cared for, there's no fighting between individuals. You'd have much more natural relations between humans, a much healthier, I think, relations between humans in a socialist society. And it's something worth fighting for. And it can be fought for, and it would change the relations between men and women. So I think we actually have a far more powerful argument than some of the extreme forms of feminism, which say it's all men's fault because of the nature of men. We say, no, it's not the nature of men. It's the nature of people who live in a class society. Remove the class society, remove the material conditions, and you will remove the basic. It won't disappear overnight. But as Engels says in his book, once a generation of men who have never had to buy a woman appear, and once a generation of women who have never had to sell themselves appear, then the relations between the sexes will change. That's what will happen. Our task is to fight to build a society where those material conditions exist. It's not my task to tell the future generations what kind of sex to have and who with and how often. That will be their business. And furthermore, even if I did try to dictate, I'd be dead by then. And I wouldn't have many powers to impose my will. And I have no desire to impose a will. I want to create the conditions, as a Marxist, that would allow genuine freedom of human beings in the future. That's what we're about as Marxists. That's what we're fighting for.
All right. All right. We got one last super chat from Rottweiler. If you depend on the state, you're property of the state, and what the state gives us, the state can take away. Just saying, gaslighting socialists. That's right, guys. When the state assigns your housing, that means the state decides where you live. That means the state decides how long you live there. When the state controls the energy production, that means the state gets to decide who heats their home in winter. That means the state gets to decide how much gasoline you get for your car, or even if you're allowed to have a gasoline-powered car anymore. When the state controls education and bans homeschooling and private schooling, that means the state gets to decide what your children learn. When the state controls healthcare and bans private doctors, that means the state can literally decide who lives and who dies. This is not theoretical. When the state controls the production of the food, remember, I really think the big takeaway from this presentation wasn't actually about the nuclear family. It was about the fact that socialists believe that farmers created capitalism. I didn't know that. That was the big revelation for me. Socialists believe that farmers created capitalism. What do farmers do? Farmers produce food. Socialists want to control the production of food. Socialists literally believe, based on the presentation that we just watched, that it is the production of food that created capitalism in the first place. And when socialists control the production of food, they decide who lives and who dies. When socialists control the production of food, they can get you to do anything that they want you to do. And there is nothing that you can do to stop it. Because the alternative is you will starve. And your family will starve. Do you guys understand this? This is not theoretical. It's a literal Hunger Games, guys. This is happening right in front of us, right now. And I'm the only one on the internet showing you this stuff. I am the only one on the internet explaining it. James Lindsay is talking about a goddamn non-existent, made-up fantasy of a Gnostic sex cult. I'm showing you the real radical revolutionary socialists that are eliciting the Cultural Revolution in the United States today. Do you get it? We do this every Saturday at 6 p.m., except programming note, we will not be having Socialism Saturday next week. I promise there's a very good reason for it. You will find out the very good reason that we will not be having Socialism Saturday next week. After the following week, you'll find out, okay? I promise you there's a very good reason for it. But I will make it up to you. We're doing programming all week long, except for Friday. And of course, if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to the Actively Unwoke Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. SGT Rosie says, I read something about revolutions having better success in agrarian societies than in industrial ones. No, they actually believe the revolution is going to have more success in the United States because it's a fully developed country. That's what they believe. We've heard them say it. So anyway, guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing, head over to the Substack, sign up for a subscription, $8 a month, $80 a year. We're still doing our spy stream. We have one more day of spy stream tomorrow. We're going inside a live woke training, and I'm showing you about it. You can join us for that tomorrow. It's going to start around about noon Eastern time tomorrow. Also, tomorrow, we have movie night in the supporter Discord. We will be watching In Time in the supporter Discord at 8 p.m. tomorrow. That is only available to supporters on my Substack, my locals, my Patreon, etc., all the places. But I do prefer that you support me on the Substack. And I will be sending out a newsletter that looks a little bit like this tomorrow. That's going to have access to our 2 Zoom calls that we do every single week. That's going to have access to the supporter Discord. That's going to have a 10% off discount code in the Unwoke Art store. Make sure you keep an eye out on your email for that, because that will have access to all of the supporter perks and everything else. I am now going to go relax and possibly drink a 3rd beer. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. It's been a busy day. I appreciate you all. I will see you later. Have a good one. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.